So let's start with what might be the simplest quadratic equation of all. X squared is equal to 0. So this is a quadratic. The highest degree that appears is 2. And what we have is we have a situation where we want to solve for x. Now remember, we have a rule. Whenever a product happens to be 0, it means one of the two pieces must be 0. So in this situation, the two pieces are the same. Remember, x squared just means x times x. So we know that either the first piece is 0, which means x equals 0, or the second piece is 0, which also means that x equals 0. So all we get is x equals 0. Let's try a slightly harder one. Suppose we have something like this. Okay, this does not start off in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. However, really quickly, we can add x to both sides. I'll do this in 2 steps. And then we can subtract 1 from both sides. And now we have x squared plus x equals 0. So this is a quadratic with a equals 1, b equals 1, c equals 0. Those are the coefficients of the powers of x squared, x to the 1, and the constant term. So, how do we solve something like this? Well, let's use that same trick. A product is 0 when one of the two parts is 0. So, this has an x, this has an x. We can factor. And now we know that either x equals 0 or x plus 1 equals 0. So those are the two possibilities that give us, that satisfy this equation. We can check what happens if we plug 0. Well, I get 1 equals 1. And what happens if we plug in minus 1? Well, we would get minus 1 squared plus 1 equals minus 1 plus 1. This is 2. This is 2. And since 2 equals 2, we're all good. Let's try one more. Let's try solving something like x squared plus x minus 1 equals 2x plus 5. So we have this linear thing on the right, a quadratic on the left, but once we move everything over to one side, we're going to have a quadratic equation. So what side? Well, let's move everything over to the left side. I'll subtract 2x. And I'll subtract 5. So now what do I have? I have x squared minus x minus 6 equals 0. Okay. Well, let's try to factor this. I put an x here and an x here. I know I'm going to want, if there's a way to factor this with integers, I know that these integers have to either be 1 and 6 or 2 and 3. Because those are the numbers with product 6. So what do I need here? Well, if I choose 1 and 6, let's try it. This is not going to go well because I need to get a minus 1. And there's no way that I could take plus or minus 6 plus or minus 1 and get a minus 1. So that's not going to work. But what is going to work? Well, let's try 2 and 3. So, I want to get a minus 1. Is there a way I can get a minus 1 out of plus or minus 3 and plus or minus 2? Sure, if I subtract the 3 and I add the 2, that's going to work out perfect. So, we can check x squared minus 3x plus 2x, that gives me minus x, and then this gives me minus 6. So, what do I know? I know a product is 0 when one of the two pieces is 0. So either x plus 2 equals 0, or x minus 3 equals 0. This means x equals negative 2, and this means x equals 3, and those are our two solutions.